A year into my marriage with my arch-nemesis, Betsy, she got into a car accident and lost her memory. To make matters worse, her memories were stuck in the year she hated me the most. When she saw my wedding ring, she scoffed. "Who on earth was unfortunate enough to marry you?" I chuckled, glancing at the bandage on her head. "Let's not dwell on that. It wasn't you anyway." I thought, if I tell her it was you, the shock might just be enough to fry her brain. "When did you get married?" she asked. 2.5 years ago, I replied calmly. "What did I do back then?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. I smiled sweetly. "You gave me a huge red envelope as a wedding gift." Betsy lowered her gaze. "Impossible." For some unknown reason, a flicker of melancholy flashed across her stunning face. As expected, even with amnesia, she's hard to fool. With our history, she'd spike the food with poison at my wedding then give me a red envelope. She'd have wanted to make it the biggest joke in history. Watching her dazed and confused, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. I put my arm around her. "Come on, let's go home." Her eyes suddenly lit up, as if grasping at a glimmer of hope. I quickly fabricated a reason. "You know, your family, they went bankrupt. You're my maid now. It's been tough keeping it from you, Betsy." And with that, the mighty Betsy, the untamable heiress of the Liu family, finally crumbled. To make the act convincing, I had prepped the housemaids and Betsy's parents beforehand. This was all to keep her calm and prevent her from stressing about the company. So, when Betsy, still clinging to a sliver of hope, called her parents from the car, their response shattered her last defense. "Sweetheart, we're truly bankrupt." She hung up, eyes welling up. The once proud and arrogant daughter of a wealthy family was now a penniless maid. It was in this moment of vulnerability that she finally spoke. "So, what are my duties at your house?" "Plenty," I chirped. "Laundry, cooking, serving tea, you name it." I paused, adding with a sly grin, "Oh, and you have to wash my feet." Betsy turned her head to look out the window, her chiseled profile exuding a heartbreaking vulnerability. Who could have imagined the once fiery Betsy reduced to this? My heart ached with a mixture of guilt and amusement. I had to suppress the urge to laugh. The real Betsy was known for her fiery temper and sharp tongue. I once joked that the only way she'd shed a tear for me was at my funeral. She had overheard and quipped, "Think again. I'd be too busy setting off fireworks." And now, here she was, fragile and subdued. It was a sight I never thought I'd see. I held back my laughter all the way home. As soon as we arrived, I went straight to my study to tackle the accumulated paperwork. When I returned to my room, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. Betsy, standing awkwardly with a basin of water at her feet. In her hand, she clutched something. It was her pajamas. Betsy was a creature of habit, wearing the same pajamas from college even 4 years into our marriage. She turned, her eyes momentarily clouded with confusion. "You're married, but why are my things in your room?" I chuckled, walking towards her. I gently pulled her collar, bringing her closer. Her ears turned crimson as she averted her gaze. "What are you?" My fingertip landed on her forehead, silencing her. "After we got married, my wife has been living abroad. You understand, I need someone to warm the bed, right?" I whispered, my voice a low murmur. She looked at me, utterly bewildered. "So, she began, her voice trailing off. "Yes, you are what you think I mean," I finished her sentence, watching as her eyes drooped. A flicker of hurt flashed in their depths. Damn, I'm such a jerk. I thought she looked so lost and heartbroken in that moment. A pang of guilt hit me. Am I taking this too far? Betsy is a proud woman. Waking up as a maid and discovering this, could it be too much? But before I could dwell on it further, she threw her arms around me, burying her face in my chest with a desperate tenderness. She kissed me, her lips fierce and possessive. Even with amnesia, some skills hadn't faded. Bathed in moonlight, her eyes were a swirling storm of desire and youthful passion. "Who's prettier, me or your wife?" she growled, biting my neck. Her movements were urgent, demanding an answer. "It's not that I don't want to answer," I thought hazily. "It's just, how do I answer that?" "Tell me," she demanded, nipping at my skin. As I drifted off to sleep, wrapped in her embrace, I couldn't help but think, why is it always her? Why can't it be me who gets to be the clueless one? Holding her close felt natural, instinctive. I nuzzled her hair, murmuring, "Betsy, my Betsy." In my arms, Betsy stiffened, her body slowly turning rigid. The next morning, I reached out instinctively for the warmth beside me, only to find cold sheets. I sat up, instantly alert. The sight of Betsy downstairs, bustling around the kitchen and chatting with the other maids, calmed me. Habits are hard to break, even with amnesia. When I finally sat down at the dining table, Betsy and the other maids lined up respectfully. "Let's eat," I said, gesturing to the spread. "Aren't you hungry after all that hard work last night?" I couldn't resist teasing her. She blushed, looking away. Midway through breakfast, she asked hesitantly, "Is your wife Sally Young?" I choked on my milk, barely managing to swallow it down. I stole a glance at her. Her face was a picture of dejection. It seemed Sally Young had left quite an impression on her. Speaking of Sally, she was my first love. We met in college. She was a senior assigned to welcome new students, and I was immediately smitten. Betsy, on the other hand, was my childhood rival. We competed on everything, from who got to play the emperor in the school play, which led to our first big fight, to academics. We ended up going to the same university, much to our mutual annoyance. "He's like a bad penny," I'd complain. "We're destined to be enemies," she'd retort. But in college, we mostly stayed out of each other's way. way. It was during that time that I met Sally. She was everything Betsy wasn't: gentle, warm, and encouraging. We started dating after a university club event at an amusement park. I bet you can't beat me at archery, I challenged her. That night, bathed in the soft glow of the park lights, Sally smiled. I'm sure you'll win, because all the prizes you win will be mine. It was that simple. Who knew love could be so easy? That night, I confessed my feelings, and to my surprise, she reciprocated. Sally was a wonderful girlfriend. She'd buy me breakfast, hold my hand during dates, and always made time for me, even with her busy schedule in the lab. If things had gone differently, perhaps Betsy and I wouldn't be in this situation. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but glance at her. My silence was taken as confirmation. Betsy mumbled, I understand. I'm just the mistress. I shouldn't pry. She stubbornly turned her head away, staring out the window. Classic Betsy, I thought, always putting on a brave face, even when it's killing her inside. The mention of Sally must have prompted her return because, within a week, she was back from abroad, joining my partner company with her team. The first time we saw each other at the office, she seemed to have shed her youthful naivety, replaced with an air of sophisticated grace. Lee, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. I've always wanted to apologize. I didn't understand your choice back then. When she left for a fellowship abroad, I had offered to go with her. Lee, I don't want you to change your life for me, she had said firmly. Why not? We can go together. I argued back. Kevin gets to go with you, and you two get to spend all your time together in the lab. Now you're even going abroad together. Do you like him? Because it's something I have to do, she explained patiently. But you, Lee, you have your own dreams. Don't make such a decision because of me. I can't bear that responsibility. Young and stubborn, I gave her an ultimatum. Come with me, or we break up. We all know how that ended. She pursued her dreams abroad with her like-minded colleague, Kevin, while I nursed my broken heart. I resented Sally for a while, convinced that she had left because her feelings had changed. But as time passed, I realized that it's never easy for anyone to shoulder the weight of another person's dreams. Sally's choice wasn't wrong. It's okay, I said, shaking my head. I was just being a stubborn kid. Sally looked at me, her eyes shimmering. Are you happy? Her gaze fell on my wedding ring. I mean, are you truly happy? I thought of Betsy back home, clinging to me like a lost puppy when I tried to leave for work that morning. I had to practically pry her off me before she finally retreated to the bed, pouting. She might be a mistress in her mind, but she was definitely good at playing the part. I smiled, very happy. Sally's face fell slightly. After a moment of silence, she spoke again. Actually, I heard about your sudden marriage 2 months after our breakup. I thought about coming back. She trailed off, a hint of regret in her voice. I always felt responsible, like I forced you into such a hasty decision. She looked at me, her clear eyes holding both a tentative hope and a quiet determination. It felt like she was implying that we could still rewrite the past. Her words sent a jolt of panic through me, causing me to knock over my coffee. The hot liquid splashed on my hand, turning the skin instantly red. Lee, Sally exclaimed, reaching for my hand. Just then, a loud clatter echoed from the doorway. A figure stood frozen in the doorway, her delicate features contorted in a mixture of shock and hurt. It was Betsy, my amnesiac wife. From her vantage point, she saw Sally holding my hand as we gazed at each other with unconcealed concern. Her eyes welled up, and her lips formed a thin, tight line. She looked utterly heartbroken. It must have seemed to her like a lowly concubine stumbling upon the Empress's grand return. Betsy swallowed her emotions and said quietly, sorry to interrupt. Then, she turned and left, her shoulders slumped. Betsy, I exclaimed, immediately pulling my hand away from Sally and rushing after her. With her long legs, she was surprisingly fast. I finally caught up to her at the elevator, my frustration mounting. I grabbed her wrist, spinning her around. Listen. The rest of my words died in my throat as I met her gaze. Her eyes were red and brimming with unshed tears, her expression a mixture of betrayal and hurt. It was a side of Betsy I had never seen before, and it struck a chord deep within me. All my anger evaporated, replaced by a wave of tenderness. I cupped her face instinctively. Hey, what's wrong? Who made my Betsy so sad? She swatted my hand away. Your wife is back. I'll get out of your way. No, wait, you're not listening. Maybe I should just come clean. I thought desperately. Just then, Sally caught up to us. Lee, it's been a while, she said, extending her hand towards Betsy. Betsy glanced at Sally's outstretched hand, and the vulnerable girl from a moment ago vanished. In her place was the aloof, proud Betsy I knew. Even if she was living in the shadows, she would face the world with her head held high. She shook Sally's hand, her voice cold. Long time no see. Unbeknownst to Sally, Betsy's grip was so tight her knuckles had turned white. Sally, sensing the strange tension but misinterpreting it, suggested, why don't we have dinner together? It's been so long. And so, the three of us ended up at the same table, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Come to think of it, after Sally and I started dating, Betsy had mostly disappeared from my radar. There was that one time I bumped into her by chance. She was leaning against her car, drinking. She looked up at me, her eyes clouded with alcohol. I frowned, surprised. I had never seen her touch a drop before. Betsy noticed me and straightened up, dropping her bottle. You really like her, don't you? What else am I supposed to do? Like you? I scoffed. What's so bad about me? She challenged. What does she have that I don't? Everything, I said flatly. Bathed in the moonlight, she looked strangely vulnerable. Everything, she repeated softly before turning away and getting into her car. She sped off, leaving me standing there alone. After that night, our paths rarely crossed. It was then I realized that sometimes, the people you thought you'd never escape from are surprisingly easy to avoid. All it takes is a conscious effort to stay away. Back to the present, determined to ease the tension, I gestured for Sally to order first. As she rattled off a few dishes, Betsy's face hardened. Don't you know he doesn't eat spicy food anymore? Sally's hand hand froze, hovering over the menu. Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. Even Sally, with her usual social grace, seemed caught off guard. What's going on? She must have thought. I'm his ex, you're his wife. Why are you acting like this? Betsy, misinterpreting Sally's confusion, looked even angrier. It was as if she was thinking, how dare she act so clueless after marrying him when I'm the one who knows him better. So, you've been abroad all these years, she pressed, her voice sharp. Yes, I was leading a research team, Sally replied, bewildered. We've only just returned now that the project is complete. And work was more important than him. Betsy's voice rose slightly. Don't you know what he's been through all these years? I blinked. What I've been through. But then it dawned on me. From Betsy's perspective, I was a neglected husband with a wife who was always away on business, leaving me all alone. Well, when you put it that way, Sally looked from Betsy to me, clearly lost. I don't understand. I'm sorry. Seeing how uncomfortable Sally was, I quickly intervened, shoving a plate of food towards Betsy. Here, eat. You must be starving. Betsy looked at me, her expression unreadable as I continued to cater to her. Then, a slow smile spread across her face, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous light. It made my blood run cold. Oh no, I thought, what is she planning now?